D4vd's calm smile and Tesla driving routine hid a darkness no one could have imagined, and when the house he handed over became the centerpiece of a shocking investigation, the truth about dismembered bodies and hidden secrets sent shockwaves through the entire community. D4vd lived a life that seemed ordinary to the outside world. His neighborhood was quiet, lined with manicured lawns and identical houses, where everyone knew each other by sight, but rarely by name. To neighbors, D4vd was just another face passing by on morning walks or taking his Tesla for late-night drives. The house he lived in was large, almost imposing, with tall windows and a gate that always seemed slightly ajar. It was immaculate, but there was an air of secrecy about it, something intangible that made passers-by glance twice and quickly move on. People noticed the Tesla parked in the driveway, sleek and polished, but rarely saw him drive it anywhere during the day. Despite the appearances, there was a sense that D4vd's life was carefully curated, almost too precise. He had no visitors, and even the mail seemed to accumulate in neat piles by the door. On some mornings, neighbors would see him tending to the garden, trimming hedges with surgical precision, yet never interacting with anyone who walked past. There was something quietly unsettling about the way he maintained his property, like he was protecting more than just the house. He had a presence that was easy to overlook but difficult to forget, a kind of calmness that hid something deeper beneath. Then came the day that no one in the neighborhood would forget. D4vd handed over the deed to his house. No fanfare, no announcement. Just a simple transfer of ownership to a person no one knew. At first, the local authorities treated it as an unusual but legal act. People whispered about it, curious and puzzled, but it seemed harmless on the surface. Still, the timing felt off. A house like that, in such a quiet neighborhood, didn't change hands suddenly without a reason. Some neighbors speculated about financial trouble. Others thought it might be a gift, or perhaps even part of some business deal they couldn't understand. It wasn't long after that first odd event that subtle signs of something being amiss began to emerge. Neighbors started noticing packages left unattended on the front porch for days at a time, even though D4vd's schedule suggested he was home. Strange odors occasionally wafted from the garage, faint but persistent, hard to place, yet impossible to ignore. Dogs would bark at nothing in particular, and a few children reported feeling uneasy near the property, though no one could explain why. These small, eerie details began to paint a picture that was inconsistent with the calm, orderly life D4vd seemed to lead. Behind the closed doors, life was not as ordinary as it appeared. The house, seemingly a sanctuary, had areas that were off-limits even to those allowed inside. Locked rooms, secured compartments, and spaces that were unusually cold or silent suggested a meticulous control over what others could see. There was a rhythm to D4vd's days that nobody could decipher, a quiet routine that somehow felt calculated. The Tesla, always immaculately maintained, was never parked in the same spot for long. Its movement seemed almost choreographed, a part of the larger, hidden pattern of his life. The transfer of the house, combined with these subtle signals, would eventually lead authorities to uncover a series of truths so shocking that the neighborhood would never feel safe or ordinary again. Weeks passed after D4vd transferred the house, and life in the neighborhood attempted to return to its usual quiet rhythm. The new owner, a young professional who had purchased the property with excitement and little suspicion, began settling in. At first, everything seemed normal, the garden still pristine, the rooms clean and untouched, the air filled with the faint scent of polished wood. But as they explored more of the house, small inconsistencies started to appear. Drawers that should have been empty contained unusual objects, and behind a false panel in the garage, something caught the new owner, S.I., tightly wrapped bundles that didn't belong in any ordinary home. Unsure of what they had found, the new owner called the authorities. Police arrived cautiously, their experience telling them that this was no ordinary call. When they opened the packages, the horror of the discovery became clear. Inside were human remains, meticulously dismembered and carefully stored. The way they had been preserved and arranged suggested a methodical mind behind the gruesome act, someone who had taken the time to ensure no trace would be left in a conventional search. The calmness of the storage only heightened the shock. The community, already unsettled by the sudden house transfer, now faced an unimaginable reality. The quiet, orderly life D4vd had maintained masked something horrifying. Investigators immediately began piecing together the timeline. Surveillance footage from nearby streets revealed D4vd's Tesla moving at odd hours, often late at night, carrying what appeared to be large, unidentifiable objects. Forensic teams examined the vehicle and found more evidence of careful concealment. Every detail pointed to someone with a meticulous, calculating mind, someone who could maintain an outwardly normal life while committing acts that were both violent and precise. Authorities were stunned by the level of planning and the lack of apparent motive that could explain such behavior. As the investigation expanded, the neighborhood grew tense. Rumors spread quickly, fueled by the fear of the unknown. Neighbors who had once waved casually to D4vd now spoke in hushed tones about the quiet man they thought they knew. Media coverage amplified the horror, bringing national attention to a story that had begun as a seemingly simple real estate transaction. Psychologists and criminal profilers suggested that D4vd's outward calmness and orderly habits were typical of someone skilled at compartmentalizing their life, separating the monstrous acts they committed from the facade they presented to the world. The discovery also led to questions about what else might have been hidden. Authorities began searching properties associated with D4vd, tracing his digital communications, financial transactions, and previous movements. Every clue revealed a more complicated picture, a web of secrets and planning that suggested the house and the Tesla were only small parts of a larger, darker story. Investigators realized that uncovering the full truth would take patience, precision, and courage, as each new revelation brought more chilling questions than answers. The quiet suburban life had been shattered, and the full scale of D4vd's actions was only beginning to emerge, leaving everyone involved in a state of disbelief and dread. Authorities dug deeper into D4vd's life, uncovering a series of unsettling patterns that had gone unnoticed for years. His digital footprint was extensive but carefully managed, with encrypted messages, hidden accounts, and transactions that left little trace. Investigators discovered that he had been communicating with unknown individuals online, often discussing meetings in secret locations and coordinating activities that were difficult to trace. Every message, every deletion, and every attempt to cover his tracks only suggested a level of planning and intent that went far beyond a single act of violence. D4vd had created a world where he could operate in complete secrecy, controlling what others saw and what remained hidden. Forensic experts reconstructed the movements of his Tesla, analyzing GPS data, traffic cameras, and cellular signals. They found a pattern that was both methodical and disturbing. The car had made frequent trips late at night to locations that, on the surface, seemed ordinary. Warehouses, parking lots, and quiet side streets, but each stop aligned with moments when someone had been reported missing. The bundles discovered in the vehicle were not isolated incidents. They were part of a carefully orchestrated sequence that allowed D4vd to transport remains without attracting attention. The sheer precision of the operation suggested a mind that was meticulous, calculating, and frighteningly organized. Investigators also examined D4vd's financial records, uncovering payments to services that did not exist and withdrawals that had no clear purpose. Some transactions were small, almost imperceptible, while others were large enough to raise red flags. The money trail hinted at a network, a shadow world that D4vd may have been a part of, or at least connected to. Every piece of evidence added to the sense that this was not a spontaneous act, but the result of careful preparation over months, if not years. Psychologists noted that the ability to maintain a calm, orderly life while managing such a hidden world required extraordinary discipline and detachment. Surveillance footage from D4vd's neighborhood showed him moving at unusual hours, sometimes carrying heavy concealed objects to and from his Tesla. Witnesses recalled seeing him take trips that seemed mundane at first, a grocery run, a late-night drive, but when cross-referenced with missing person reports, the timing was too coincidental to ignore. Each new discovery built a picture of a man who could compartmentalize his life with chilling efficiency, presenting one face to the world while committing acts of violence behind closed doors. As the investigation progressed, authorities began piecing together the psychological profile of D4vd. He was methodical, patient, and extremely careful in his actions. He understood how to manipulate perception, how to mask intent, and how to remain invisible in plain sight. This profile helped investigators predict possible locations of interest and potential future movements. The realization that D4vd had planned much of his life around secrecy, control, and concealment created a sense of urgency. Every discovery raised new questions. Who else might be involved? What other locations contained evidence? And how many lives had been affected by his actions? Each answer uncovered led to more chilling possibilities, leaving authorities and the community struggling to comprehend the true scope of D4vd's carefully hidden world. Just as investigators felt they were closing in on the full picture, a shocking twist changed everything. DNA analysis from the remains in the Tesla revealed that the victim was not the person they initially suspected. The body belonged to someone reported missing months earlier, a young professional whose disappearance had barely made local headlines. This revelation forced authorities to reconsider the timeline and the scale of D4vd's actions. The initial theory of a single, isolated crime began to unravel, suggesting a more complex and disturbing reality. The meticulous nature of the storage and concealment in the Tesla indicated that this was not a one-time event, but part of a pattern that may have gone unnoticed for some time. Further investigation revealed anomalies in D4vd's past activities. Travel records, financial statements, and digital correspondence suggested he had been involved in planning and executing movements that required extreme caution and forethought. Surveillance footage captured him at locations that, when pieced together, formed a network of places where he could hide or manipulate evidence. This pattern, previously invisible, now appeared deliberate and organized. The police realized that D4vd's actions were not random, they were strategic, calculated to avoid detection while allowing him to operate undisturbed for months. Then came the revelation that would send shockwaves through the investigation. Evidence pointed to the involvement of an accomplice, someone who had been quietly assisting D4vd. Bank transactions, digital messages, and unusual patterns of movement suggested coordination. Investigators traced activity back to a person who had been living nearby, blending into the neighborhood and maintaining a low profile. This individual had facilitated the concealment of remains, the transfer of materials, and possibly even the handover of the house itself. The discovery completely reframed the case. D4vd was not working alone, and the extent of planning behind the crime was far more elaborate than anyone had imagined. Authorities scrambled to identify the accomplice, cross-referencing data from multiple sources. The level of precision and secrecy displayed by both D4vd and this unknown partner raised difficult questions about how such crimes could occur under the radar. Every detail revealed the depth of their coordination and the cold efficiency with which they executed their plans. The accomplice's involvement suggested motives and methods that went beyond a simple act of violence, indicating a shared understanding of secrecy, concealment, and meticulous control. As the investigation unfolded, a chilling portrait emerged. D4vd and his accomplice operated in a way that allowed them to remain invisible while committing acts that were horrifying in their precision. The network of locations, the careful handling of evidence, and the timing of each move revealed a level of sophistication that stunned law enforcement. It became clear that uncovering the full scope of the conspiracy would take painstaking effort, as every discovery seemed to lead to new layers of planning and deception. The revelation of the accomplice not only escalated the stakes, but also transformed the case into a story of manipulation, control, and unimaginable coordination. With each passing day, authorities realized they were dealing with minds that had operated in shadows for far longer than anyone could have anticipated. D4vd was eventually apprehended after a tense investigation that spanned weeks, during which authorities meticulously gathered evidence to ensure a solid case. The calm, unassuming man who had once seemed ordinary was now revealed to be the architect of a series of crimes that shook the community to its core. Every piece of evidence, from the dismembered body in the Tesla to the carefully hidden compartments in his house, painted a picture of someone capable of extreme planning and cold detachment. Law enforcement officials described the precision and organization behind his actions as chilling, noting how he had maintained a facade of normalcy while orchestrating events that would horrify anyone who discovered them. As investigators pieced together the timeline, the magnitude of D4vd's manipulations became clearer. The house he handed over, once seen as a simple transaction, had been part of a calculated strategy to obscure his activities. By transferring ownership, he created distance between himself and the location where evidence of his crimes had been concealed. The Tesla, meticulously cleaned and maintained, served as both a tool and a mobile storage space, allowing him to operate with remarkable efficiency. Every element of his life had been structured to minimize suspicion, demonstrating a level of foresight that made the case particularly alarming to those studying criminal behavior. The community struggled to come to terms with the revelations. Neighbors who had waved at him casually on the street were now left questioning how well they could ever know the people around them. The pristine house, the quiet routines, the careful attention to detail, all had masked a darkness hidden beneath the surface. For many, the most unsettling aspect was the realization that D4vd had operated for so long without detection, exploiting ordinary patterns of life to carry out acts that were incomprehensible in their scope and brutality. Psychologists noted that his ability to compartmentalize normal interactions from his criminal activities demonstrated extraordinary psychological control, a trait that made him both elusive and dangerous. The involvement of an accomplice added further complexity to the case. Authorities uncovered connections that suggested the planning and execution of these crimes were shared responsibilities, with each party understanding their role in maintaining secrecy. The accomplice had facilitated the concealment of evidence, coordinated logistics, and assisted in the strategic transfer of the house, amplifying the sophistication of the criminal operation. Together, D4vd and this partner had created a system designed to evade detection while maintaining control over the narrative of their lives. The discovery forced investigators to re-examine the case from multiple angles, revealing layers of planning and deception that had previously gone unnoticed. As D4vd faced trial, the case became a cautionary tale about appearances and hidden realities. The courtroom proceedings unveiled the full scope of his actions, documenting the meticulous nature of his crimes and the psychological manipulation that enabled him to maintain a normal exterior. The house, the Tesla, and the carefully orchestrated routines all became symbols of a life built on control, secrecy, and careful planning. While justice moved forward, the community and law enforcement were left grappling with the unsettling truth that the most dangerous threats can sometimes hide behind the most ordinary facades. The story of D4vd served as a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving and that even the most familiar lives can conceal the darkest secrets.